Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Priya Taleri from Dr. Priya Skin and Hair Clinic, Bangalore. We are located here in Marthali Whitefield Main Road in Bangalore. So, welcome to this Sibamed India interaction on acne and hair care. So, you're all feel free to drop me your comments and messages. So, if you have any kind of questions and queries on acne and hair, I would be more than happy to answer the queries. Okay. So, as friends, you all know we are all in the monsoon season now. So, this session is a little bit oriented towards the monsoon specific hair care during monsoon season regarding hair and skin. Okay. Uh, so, okay, by the time you post your questions, I would like to talk few words on monsoon care now. So, regarding skin during monsoons, we all should be knowing that uh, there would be little excess oil production in the skin. There would be retainance of grim and scum on the skin, and little bit of the dirt, environmental pollution, and such things can make your skin little more prone for fungal infections, as well as sometimes these endogenous eczemas can also flare up. You also must be, it's a common experience. We all know that there would be returns of the sebum and the dirt products during the humid weather, like in monsoons. So even scalp will be more prone for itching. General itching will be much more in the scalp. So dandruff occurrence is also more common. Okay. Somebody is already asking me, Mr. Sachin Chaudhary is asking me a question on hair fall problem. Yeah, we are coming to that actually. So I would be, as I was highlighting on the monsoon care, so the hair needs frequent wash usually, generally during the monsoon. Probably if at all you were doing weekly once or twice wash, maybe we will have to increase it twice or thrice also. And a good pH balanced shampoo, even if it is used frequently, it should be fine. And an instant conditioner, standalone instant conditioner after hair wash is also ideal, so that you have a conditioner coat on your skin, in your hair, and hair doesn't imbibe that much moisture. We all should know that hair is a hydrophobic structure, means hair doesn't invite the uh, water inside it. In that way, hair stays stronger. We must be knowing our hair would be around 30% more stretchable just after bath. The wet hair, when we comb, it can stretch up to 30%. Why so? That is because of the water absorption, diffusion of the water inside the cuticle, and little bit the covalent bonds in the hair can go weaker. So we don't want this to happen on and off, because we know all of us will once in a while drench in the hair in monsoon season, right? So we should make sure that we dry our hair properly. Use a good shampoo with a pH balance like 5.5. The hair fiber is having around pH of 3.67, they say. So we should be looking for a little more alkaline shampoo, like, or a pH balanced shampoo like 5.5, which neutralizes this acidic pH in the hair fibers. So if we use that with a standalone conditioner, that should be good enough. That should be a good idea of taking hair care during monsoon. Of course, there are specific shampoos which have some medicated ingredients, like ketoconazole, or say salicylic acid, zinc pyrithione, the common ingredients we all know, or pyroptenolomine, or say tar for more severe dandruff. So these would be added to the regime in case we have itchy scalp or troubled scalp. So this is about hair, in general about hair. So be a little watchful about fungal infections, excess seborrhea, and hair drenching, especially wetting and then drying. This would damage the hair. Hair may go further dry. So we need to put a nice conditioner. Even a warm coconut oil massage or a home mask is not bad during monsoons. We can do it. So this was a little tip about hair care. And when I come to the next thing is skin and monsoon, if at all I have to speak in general, then we have to be careful that the oil production can be little more during this humid weather. So there can be a little flare up of acne. And there can, as I told you, the fungal infection stuff and all, which would obviously not occur on the face. So make sure that you bathe properly, routinely, and then use properly dried clothes, and proper hygiene habits should be maintained much more during the monsoons compared to other seasons. As regarding to skin, and so there are a few questions now. We shall take up one or two questions. So someone is asking remedies for blackheads. Yeah. So blackheads are very common. So in simple words, blackheads and whiteheads, what we call open comedons and closed comedons put together. So these are nothing but a small, tiny grains which form under the skin because of the oil retenance. So we have a pilosebaceous unit in skin. Countless numbers are there on our facial skin actually. So once in a while, if the facial skin is getting the facial sebum production is more, Geeta, then Mrs. Gitu is asking me this question. So then what happens? So those oil movements are blocked temporarily and we can generate these blackheads. So we should always look for a good face wash which contains a little mild exfoliating agent, I would say, which should not be a harsh exfoliant also, because it doesn't mean only the oily skin person would generate blackheads. There is a lot of chance even a sensitive skin person, or say a person with dry skin, can once in a while develop blackheads. So those blackheads can come from external means also, like how? By putting some comedogenic ingredients on skin, say oil. So we all Indians are very fond of oil. We love the hair oil. We love the sometimes the the body massage with oil. Sometimes that comes onto the face as well. So if we are into repeated habit of putting oils, even if you were a dry skin person, you may develop a lot of blackheads, whiteheads. Further, it can be like it would be a breeding ground for acne later. So a salicylic face wash, 1-2% salicylic is pretty mild, 1 to 2% that can be used. Nowadays we have resorcinol, some other natural exfoliating herbal ingredients are also there. Those can be used. Glycolic acid is also an exfoliant, but for blackheads, ideal is to go with a salicylic acid face wash or something with little bit with resorcinol. That also would help. There is another question on hair fall. So hair fall can be so many reasons, na, Mr. Sachin. Hair fall is because of very simple reasons for like having suffered from a fever 2 months before, or having not having good nutrition for some period of time, or having suffered some other illness, surgeries. Such simple things may lead to hair fall in general. But if at all it is a male, these things do account for less percentage, probably 5 to 10% only. Rest of the times the hair fall in men is mostly male pattern baldness. So we first have to note, we have to identify or to examine which type of hair fall it is. So if it is a general hair fall, it is happening from front as well as the back, and you feel that there's no particular pattern or thinning, then you can be less worried, I would say. But if at all it is a pattern hair loss, there is always a chance it takes more time to improve, and it's a longer term issue. So that male pattern baldness is very many times genetic. But in general, if I have to tell you, how to go about hair fall, get your basic blood test done. Look for all these causes, whether you have suffered them or no. Then go to a dermatologist and get yourself checked whether you really have a pattern thinning, frontal or top recession. If it is there, then you need more specific treatments. So I was also talking about, yeah, so one by one questions are coming, but so I wanted to highlight few topics like, oiling and hair. So this is also very common questions which people ask, which oil to put. Sometimes as dermatologists, we say no oiling, especially when we come across people who have dandruff or who have seborrhea on the scalp or scaling on the scalp, or who have folliculitis, that is tiny acne on the scalp, then we straight away say do not oil. Yeah. So this oil is a very controversial topic for as such, if you ask me. So there are few good benefits, but what one should always know, hair oils will never grow their hair. There's nothing like by putting oil, one is gonna grow thicker or fuller hair. That is a myth. Then also people, we all have a misconception. When we oil our hair, shining or shininess will be permanent. So when we routinely use our oil, we can have much shinier hair. Even this may not be very true actually. Then whether hair oil is a good moisturizing agent or no. Of course, there is a little aspect to it. Little, I would say that some of the good oils can give good moisture to the scalp as well as the hair strands, but it doesn't mean hair is a very oil is a very good moisturizing agent. So, and another thing, if I oil my hair routinely, I may not suffer from hair fall ever. So, these are few myths actually. So, hair fall, hair growth, permanent shining in the hair, or say hair moisturizing properties, all these are not going to come very easily with oiling. So, over oiling also has some kind of drawbacks. So, one has to be very careful about oiling, but it is such an age old practice that none of us can be easily getting over it. But oiling should be always moderate, especially in monsoon season. They should not be over oiling because as it is, there is a lot of humidity. As it is, the hair retains the moisture more. Wetness is more. In that sense, hair can be more susceptible for trauma or say breakages actually. According to me, if at all, the choice of oil depends on the climate again. So if you're in a southern climate, a good extra virgin coconut oil, what we say, the first cold pressed oil without any colorants or perfumes is a good choice. It is a good moisturizer. It does give some moisture element to the hair. But one should always remember if there is a hair fall, oiling is not going to be the remedy for it. Or, or by putting oil, one cannot be sure of not having any hair fall, and one cannot expect that by putting oil one is going to grow longer and longer tall long hair. That is myth actually. So if I have to tell something about coconut oil, so the coconut oil in hair care, what advantages it has? It is a very good, it diffuses a lot in the hair strands compared to any other oil. Like we have so many avocado oil or jojoba oil, or you see olive oils and so many other oils. Argan oil, another popular question is on argan oil. Everyone want to know what is argan oil as well. So, but the native coconut oil is the best, I would say. So it has some lauric acid, capric acid, kind of, the unsaturated fatty acids. Sorry, it's saturated fatty acids. So these are having some kind of antibacterial and antifungal activities as well. So that can help fight the fungus also if used moderately. In the sense, fight the dandruff as well. But if used in excess, it may invite the dandruff itself. So vitamin E is there, which is a very good emollient and all a good moisturizing agent for the hair. So yeah, if it is a southern climate, I would say the oiling can be done with coconut oil. Yeah. So we are looking for some more questions here now. So other common questions asked in the the routine OPD consultations are which oil to choose. So as I told, the coconut is a good oil, but there are so many, like you have this olive oil, which has little higher percentages of unsaturated fatty acids. So it can give little more shine and little more moisture. But diffusion is maximum with the coconut oil itself. So there are some other specialty oils like jojoba oils or the pomegranate oil is also there. And people are very fond of putting the castor oil on the scalp. But it is pretty thick oil, but it is known to grow the sparse eyebrows and also known to moisturize the scalp as well as the hair. It has something called ricinoleic acid in it. It's a fatty acid. It is also a good moisturizing agent, so can be used. So we're looking for more question here. So okay, okay. So someone is asking for. There is one Mr. Manish Niyog. He's asking about good long hair tips for men, which is a little not so common a question, I would say. Of course, if you have longer hair, then you have to be much more. You need to maintain the proper hygiene. Make sure that you take care of the length also. So men usually prefer normal hair shampoos. There are quite a few shampoos available in the market. Okay, if I have to name a few, so some shampoos are made for normal hair, some for oily hair, some for dry hair. Then we have the specialty shampoos which help in special cleansing. or see deep cleansing. Those are for people who commonly like say a media person who's always using a lot of lotions and potions on the scalp and putting this and that hair grooming agents. For them, we do suggest a deep cleansing shampoo. And we have those baby shampoos. We have shampoos for troubled scalps as well. So for men, usually I suggest normal hair shampoo. If at all you have a uh, normal shampoo. So usually this will have good cleansing, a pretty good cleansing properties with little conditioning properties as well. So nowadays the shampoos come with two-in-one combination. Most of them have some inbuilt conditioning properties. So that would be good for long hair. And once in a week, oiling is also not bad. As I told you, some of the oils have good moisturizing properties like coconut oil, but overdoing is not allowed because men are more prone for seborrhea. So end of the day, if you oil a lot and leave it for longer hours, you would be prone for developing some fungus bacterial growth and maybe some folliculitis. So Manish, you choose a normal hair shampoo. If at all you think you have a normal hair, go with a normal hair shampoo. Ideal hair shampoo, I told you, should be pH balanced around 5.5, should be free of colorants and sulfates and phthalates and parabens and all the P's which we know now. Yeah, those should not be there, I guess. But we should all know that there is a surfactant in a shampoo. Then only a shampoo can do a cleansing work. So surfactant, again, the surfactant quality has to be good. So we're all very averse for this lauryl sulfate, sodium lauryl sulfate. I don't know whether most of us know or no, SLS it is called. So these are nowadays there are a lot of many clients or patients who are well aware of SLS, paraben, and all those stuffs. So if it is a normal shampoo, it should be free of all that. It should be a good certified good cleanser. Without cleanser, shampoos wouldn't work. So there would be a little chemical in it, but it should be a good chemical. That's what I would like to highlight here. Mm. Okay, Mr. Arvind is asking me, he's suffering from acne on his face, so what is the treatment? I know. Arvind, if at all, if you are a young adult, so 85% of young adults do suffer from acne, but we also should remember 65% of, adults, I'm not talking about the adolescents, the adults above 25, 28 do suffer from acne. So it's a common phenomena. First, make sure what may be the reason for your acne. So if at all, if it is a short episode and it's only there for a few days, or it's just a off late occurrence, then you should think what products must be going wrong in your routine. Maybe you should be looking for a good cleanser, a non-comedogenic, a light texture moisturizer. Of course, moisturizer is very important. We think in monsoon we have a lot of humidity, we are producing more oil, so we don't need moisturizer. So that concept is not right. So whenever we do wash our face, the surface moisture is getting going away. So we need to supplement the upper layers of skin with a good moisturizer. Then only the transepidermal water loss will be more. Even the underlying sebum production would be harmonious. So if we overwash and never use a good moisturizer, there is always a risk of over oiling in the skin. So you have to look for a recent products which you have used. If at all some wrong products, try to change them. Look into your diet as well. Diet also matters. If you are taking some comedogenic diet or something like, more of milk solids like cheese, paneer and all those, the one which have casein rich, that has to be avoided. Then we call high glycemic index diet. So simple breads also come under that category. So that has to be avoided as much as possible. Improve your diet quotient, regularize your sleep and stress levels. Make sure you use friendly, skin friendly, acne friendly products. So these are good enough for your mild acne from your side. Then you have to visit a dermatologist. If it is a mild to moderate acne, probably they'll just give you initially a good cleanser, a moisturizer, maybe few retinoids or benzyl peroxide, like that would be given. If at all it is more, they notice a lot of red bumps and more pustules or cysts on your face, then oral antibiotics or say oral retinols. If at all it is on a very severe side, or oral retinoids would be given. So acne care begins from home only, begin from the self itself. So because you take a prescription from dermatologist, so that's going to help you during that episode. So, but acne, as you know, it's a long journey. So you cannot just rely only on the creams and the routine cleansing, toning, moisturizing. That routine itself is not going to be sufficient. A good lifestyle modification, diet, those things also matter. But what we cannot fully change is our genetics. So a person who's very very prone for genetic acne, those would usually have an acne which is on a severe side actually. So that definitely needs a dermatologist intervention. Otherwise, you can do these. You can take clues from these simple measurements as well. Okay. So we are getting more questions now here. Okay, Anil Kumar is asking me about a good shampoo for dandruff. I know Anil. So Seborrhea, of course, it troubles men more than women usually because of the male hormone influence, the androgenic influence, the testosterone male hormone influence on the oil glands. So men usually have more persistent, more worse dandruff. So what happens sometimes the simple head and shoulder shampoo you take zinc pyrithione is there. So it may not be just sufficient for you. Whereas some other person light dandruff may be taken care with a milder ingredient like that. So if you feel that OTC brands have not helped you, then definitely meet a dermatologist. The commonest prescribed anti-dandruff ingredient is ketoconazole, the age-old ketoconazole shampoos. But there are so many good varieties. Some ketoconazoles nowadays coming as gel form, leave-on applications. They penetrate better. So their action on this Malassezia furfur, which is the the causative organism of this Seborrhea would be much higher. So the preparation type depends. So simple ketoconazole is a general word, but there are so many varieties and the ways of delivering it to the scalp. So you need to meet a dermatologist for that. But if you have little bit more troublesome and more inflammatory, more scaly dandruff, then they may think of adding a salicylic acid preparation, say tar preparation, such extra preparations to the regime actually. So otherwise, a good ketoconazole shampoo nowadays, some few OTC brands are also available, so you can try that. I would say. Okay. Okay. Here, someone is asking little off topic actually. They are asking about melasma. Okay, without steroid preparation. Of course, melasma is a very long run pigmentation. So, I mean, it stays on the skin for very longer time compared to other general pigmentation. So, we are actually today not covering the pigmentation topic, but to be precise, I would say there are a lot many other topicals other than steroids which are available for melasma. So first of all, a good sunscreen which should probably contain something called iron oxides. So those are very good sunscreens for melasma, and also sometimes we say zinc oxide or titanium oxide, dioxide based reflecting sunscreens. They are good. That is the first thing to start with. Then not going into sunlight without taking precautions, not getting exposed to that much heat resources, and looking for drugs which may be inducing melasma and taking them out. That is also nowadays there are so many pollutants which are having a role. Also the pollutants in the diet which are having role in melasma. The newer theories say that they do have a role in melasma. I usually prefer azelaic acid, glycolic acid, of course, hydroquinone. If it is not a very sensitive skin, hydroquinone based preparations do help. Newer formulations like tranexamic acid, vitamin C, these are much, and some herbal like licorice extracts and all are put in. These are milder ingredients which help in melasma. The best and standard ingredient still is hydroquinone only, so it should not be combined with the steroids. So that would give you very temporary improvement, and the minute you are gonna leave the product, the melasma is gonna bounce back. Meanwhile, the surrounding skin would have got damaged. So don't go for it. You should know when you have melasma that it is a long run management, and there is always a permutation combination involved there. So you have to consult a dermatologist. If it is a male melasma, then definitely you have to explore the options with the dermatologist consultation, I would say. Okay. Mr. Naresh is asking me a face wash for acne actually. Yeah, a face wash for acne depends again on the skin type and acne. If you have really oily skin and acne, you have inflammatory acne as well as comedonal acne, then a salicylic acid face wash is good to start with. Sometimes, if you just have inflammatory acne, papular pustules, and you have truncal acne, body acne, then a benzyl peroxide wash is also preferred. But apart from all this, a milder face washes which gently deep cleanse the pores without these, the particular acids are also formulated. So they are little milder on side, but they are good for people who have a moderately oily skin or say dry skin with acne and sensitive skin with acne. So first you need to check which type of skin you have and then the type of acne that also matters. We have this mandelic acid face washes also. So yeah, in say in winter season it may work little harsh on the skin, but in summers or say in humid weather like monsoons, you can look for a salicylic and mandelic acid based face washes. If you're looking for an OTC product, always choose a face wash with lesser percentage in the beginning. Then you can go for the higher percentage. So, Mr. Neelam Patel is asking me okay, about the best hair oil. In my opinion, for Indian climate, especially southern Indian climate where we are sitting today in Bangalore, I would say the coconut oil is the best hair oil. As I told you, the first press, the extra virgin without any added colorants, without any fragrance. If that is the best oil which you can bring for yourself, and a warm coconut oil massage with moderate quantity should not be overused. Moderate quantity has pretty many benefits, moisturizing properties, anti dandruff properties as well. So it's not bad to use them. Okay, Mr. Vinay is asking me about hair transplant. I know hair, Vinay, you'll have to first yourself assess for the amount of male pattern baldness you have. You'll also have to assess the donor area. I'm not a very much specialist in hair transplant, but if I have to assess your male pattern baldness and whether you have done any basic work on your male pattern baldness, trying to reverse with minoxidil, say if it is much more with finasteride, have you done that or no? That also matters before you take a counseling for hair transplant. A donor area is always important. So even if you have male pattern baldness, you should not be hesitating to save your donor area. So take good care of your hair, your rest of the hair, whoever have male pattern baldness. If they are looking for transplant or such procedures in future, they need to take overall care for their hair. They cannot ignore their occiput hair as it is strong, it is not falling, not like that. You need to use a good shampoo and take proper care of that part of hair also, because this male pattern is very very partial kind of hair loss. As you all know, it's very partial towards occiput hair. It would get saved even in late stages when you have 70% you say, then also that part may be intact. So if it is intact, then definitely you have a good chance of going for transplant. I know Manju is asking me about sensitive skin here actually. Yeah. Sensitive skin is a self-diagnosis actually most of the times. So many people come to us saying that they have a very reactant skin, they do not tolerate products well. So there may not be much telltale signs on the skin. Like you cannot make out that the person has some kind of redness or not every time. So it is a very objective, it's subjective, kind of term, sensitive skin. They say that they do not tolerate cosmetics and toiletry items that well. They sting and they have smarting sensation. They have bit of burning sensation with this and that product, which must be very normally suiting to their friends or their family. So this is sensitive skin actually. Of course, you have to choose products very wisely. Nowadays, we have meet up to 50% of the OPD. What we meet, women out of them, women may have sensitive skin, and up to 30-40% men also complain of sensitive skin. Especially scalp sensitivity is more common in men. So if you have a sensitive skin, look for a cleanser which has soap-free cleanser. That's the first tagline. You have to choose a cetyl alcohol or a sterile alcohol based. I cannot take, of course, brand names here, but that kind of face wash is ideal for sensitive skin. Then even the sunscreen. And we should never forget, in monsoon we think that there may not be that much sun, but we should remember 80% of sun rays are still reaching us in cloudy days. So we are equally prone for sunburns, tanning, and other sun-induced reactions even during monsoon. So choose a good sunscreen. A physical sunscreen is ideal for sensitive skin. So physical sunscreen is nothing like, it is nothing but a kid-friendly sunscreen in simple words, which reflects the light. Rather than having any organic chemicals in it, it will have reflectance. So that's suitable for sensitive skin. So they should look for such product when they choose a sunscreen. And when coming to moisturizer, again, it should be a ceramide based hypoallergenic moisturizer. The common ones nowadays, we have quite a few in the market, in Indian market also. Before they were all confined to the Western market. Now we dermatologists have some freedom of prescribing them because quite a few of them are available here. So physiological lipids or something called ceramides, they fill in the gaps in the skin. So if a sensitive skin person is having stinging sensation or more dryness after face wash, that means his transepidermal water loss is high, his barrier function is poor. So the cosmetic ingredients may be penetrating much more than required. So those things can be tackled with a good moisturizer. So before looking for any other whitening serum or brightening serum or say anti-aging product, a good cleanser, a toner, I would say not to be used in sensitive skin until unless they're very particular. Then some kind of organic, what we call maybe a rose water or a the rose water or witch hazel. We have another ingredient called witch hazel, which is a very soft anti-inflammatory product, which is made for sensitive skin products. Actually, even in toners, it would be used. So such toners they can look for and moisturizer. So CTM routine they have to first set right. Then they can look for something more like next step, which includes all those skin brightening agents and all. And someone again, Neelam is asking, my hair is very frizzy. My hair is very frizzy. I know frizzy hair lacks moisture, first of all. And there must be, we have something called three layers in the skin. We have a cuticle, we have a cortex, and we have a medulla. So this medulla is the central most, the layer of the hair, which gives strength to the hair. Then we have cortex, wherein the covalent bonds will be there. The shape of the hair is because of this cortex. The last upper layer is the cuticle, wherein, like tiles, we must have seen tiles, right? Like that, the overlapping tiles will be there. So it is made up of few layers. So this is cuticle. So if there is a lot of gap between these cuticles, yeah, then one can have a frizzy hair. So water is not a good agent for hair actually. So we must have seen when we just bathe and come out how fragile our hair will be. So if we put a little harsh comb, we may pluck one or two extra hairs. So that is the time when if you have a frizzy hair, make sure that you do a little warm oil massage, especially for the lower part of your hair. And when you choose a shampoo, it should be if you can look in for two-in-one shampoo is also not bad. The one which is having the conditioning properties as well. And an instant conditioner, or if at all, if your root is also very, very dry, then there are something like hair mask. Hair mask can be used up to half an hour before, just after your hair cleansing. It can be put for half an hour as well. Most of us use instant cleanser, instant conditioners, right? These are used for 5 or 10 minutes only after bath. Whereas the hair mask, which is much more thicker, which may have more of the emollients and oils in them, can be put on the dry hair for up to half an hour. And then the proper cleansing can be done. As now we also have these tile serums which can fill in those gaps in the cuticles and make the hair look shinier. So these are the external ways of taking care of frizzy hair. But if at all your frizzy hair is because of iron deficiency, say lack of biotin in your diet and all, then you should use a lot of good diet. You should use a wholesome diet which has all the dairy product, which has some pulses, which have some kind of the nuts, which has enough amount of protein along with all the micronutrients. That will help. Then we shall explore more questions if they are there. Okay. Okay. Okay, so again, more questions. The common problem in this humid monsoon season. Mrs. Leela is asking me about her 13-year-old son who's developing dandruff. So this is a right. I would say this is not an abnormal age. It's a correct age when a child can develop. Child is turning into a slowly into an adolescent and developing more hormones in the process. So those male hormones would, as I told you before, would stimulate the oil glands, the sebum secretion, and the dandruff formation would be much more. So for him, if it is just a 13-year-old, we shall not give him any strong shampoos. You can try a simple zinc pyrithione shampoo at home first, like Head and Shoulder, or we have something from the Sebamed itself, the Sebamed anti-dandruff shampoo, which has a milder ingredient like pyroxazolamide, can be tried initially. If those regular methods are not good enough, then probably you can meet a dermatologist and take a prescription on a ketoconazole or a salicylic acid based shampoo. Um, those will be much more effective in case the dandruff is on a stubborn side. So kids at this age also need good diet, and they should not be overfed with the cheese and the milk substances which we nowadays the kids are fond of. As I told you, those are much more seborrhea. They fuel the seborrhea, so it has to be in a minimal in a moderate amount. Of course, physical exercise, timely sleeping would also help. So first you have to take those measures, Lina, for your kid, and then if at all if it is still stubborn, the dermatologist should help you. Okay. Neetu is asking me about under eye dark circles. Again, Neetu, there are many reasons for under eye dark circles. Yeah, there are now there are a lot of peptides which are available for under eye dark circles. First of all, again, exploring the reason and cause is very important. So under eye dark circles can be a very simply because of a simple reason can be just lack of a good amount of adequate sleep and rest, lack of that, and more of stress can induce it. But there can be some other the hidden reasons as well. Iron deficiency is a common reason in women, so we need to correct it before we just go for topicals. Again, a person who's atopic, asthma, allergy prone, sneezing prone may have much more under eye dark circles with few lines as well, few aging signs as well. So those atopic persons have to improve their allergy quotient. So they need to have a good the breathing exercises, or they have to avoid the environmental allergens. Those things have to be done. Then after all this, then what we do is we do give you topicals. Most of them, as I told you, have peptides in them, something which can improve the blood circulation. So vitamin K is another favorite component of under eye dark circle creams. Vitamin K improves the vascular component of the under eye the dark circles. It improves the blood circulation. So most of these newer creams would have it. Apart from that, retinol is just, even if you do not have aging signs, just the under eye dark circles alone also, then also adding a retinol preparation would give a better result because it turns over the skin. The retinol should be a good one, the one which doesn't irritate the delicate under eye skin. When we choose such preparation and give a combination product which has a peptide, which has a vitamin K, then along with the general skin lighteners and a night application of a good retinol, mm, with hyaluronic acid sometimes can solve them to a good extent, to a satisfactory level, I would say. Okay, we should take a few more questions. Yeah, Mr. Raghu is asking me whether it is safe to use vitamin C regularly. Yeah, vitamin C is a very safe ingredient, I would say. So the ascorbic acid, it has to be first of all in a stable form. So if it's a stable form of vitamin C, it serves the purpose of using it for longer because it would be doing some benefit in the skin. 20% vitamin C is ideal to use. And as I told you, the stability is the issue. So you have to look for a good brand which can stay stable. Nowadays it is it is mixed with some other ingredients like ferulic acid and all, which in addition can have some kind of anti-aging benefits. So vitamin C is a is kind of a ingredient which is nowadays put in almost all cosmeceutical preparations, since it is suitable to almost all type of skin. Even a sensitive skin can tolerate it if it is combined with a moisturizer. So it has this antioxidant properties, moisturizing properties, lightening properties, anti-aging properties. So it serves one in one product for many reasons. So it is one of the dermatologist's favorite product nowadays. You can use it. So if you're using for longer, also there's no cap on how many days to use it. It is a long-term maintenance kind of molecule, so can be used easily. Okay, Mr. Raj Gopal is asking what is the best cure for hair loss. So, best cure would be finding the cause for hair loss, because many times uh, treating hair loss would be easier if you have a real root cause. But many of the times there's no reason, especially especially male pattern baldness. Because you are a male, again I'm just mentioning that diagnosis. So because it is genetic, so there is nothing like this and this is the reason, and the genes are activating some of your hormones, some of something called dihydrotestosterone, and making the hair roots go miniaturized or thinner. So that is male pattern baldness. So the first thing I would say, best cure would be looking for the reason and finding out the cause. If we have a good cause, we can, like if you like a nutritional cause, we can easily approach it. We can give you some amount of good hair nutrients and antioxidants, anti-inflammatory agents, and solve the problem for a good result. But if it is hormonal and genetic reasons, see, many people there may be set of people who have hypothyroidism, or maybe ladies, they may be having polycystic ovaries and manifesting as hair loss. Those are the more difficult scenarios or more long lasting scenarios. If it is just nutritional and there is a reason, say 2 months before you had dengue or malaria or typhoid, and after 1 or 2 months you have hair loss, that should come good. That hair cycle should recover better with multi nutrients. So biotin is the proven medicine. So if you cannot meet the doctor immediately, you can eat 10 mg biotin a day as a RDA. That's daily recommended dose. You can start taking it. So I was also in between discussing about shampoos, right? So I was just mentioning what are the types of shampoos. Shampoos for normal hair, shampoos for dry hair, then shampoos for oily hair, baby shampoos, shampoo with special cleansing, deep cleansing actions, and shampoo for therapeutic actions, like shampoos which treat fungal infection, bacterial infection, or shampoos which treat psoriasis, scalp psoriasis. I mean to say shampoos which treat seborrheic dermatitis. So they will have some special ingredients in them. So like that, we and two-in-one shampoos, of course, which have those conditioners combined in the shampoo itself. So if I have to highlight a bit about baby shampoo, so one major difference between baby shampoo and an adult shampoo is type of surfactant used. So surfactant is not cleansing, cleansing, the chemical. If I have to term it as a chemical, the cleansing chemical. So we have anionic and cationic detergents in adult shampoos. But whereas in baby shampoos, we have this amphoteric salts, something called amphoteric salts. So these shampoos are tear friendly. They do not induce the tear. So a parent who's very casually using a baby shampoo on his young baby should be always careful, because accidentally the shampoo goes inside the eyes also. The baby would have less tearing because of the shampoo. So you need to be careful with the baby shampoos also. That is what I mean to. I was just trying to highlight, because most of us think baby shampoos are very safe, so we can use. Not like that. For a baby, even baby shampoo has to be used very carefully. Betaine, we call something called betaine, which is a common agent. Thanks for patiently listening to today's talk. Thank you very much. Vidya. Save it, no, because you can send me the link.